In a magical and thick forest, there walks a lone golem, watching over it as a guardian. It exists to protect the forest and enable its survival. During its patrols, it observes all the life that exists in the ecosystem, taking care not to interfere with the fragile food chains. It simply oversees nature in its own dispensation. The forest is a place where life is born and nurtured before it eventually returns to the earth. It has strict laws, and Golem will spend thousands of years as an enforcer of those laws. Knowing he will eventually fade away, he has never doubted the purpose of his existence. That is, until one day, alerted and led by a feline creature, the guardian found a human child, chained and beaten. To his surprise, she regards him as her father. Taken in, the child, Sumi, runs around energetically, chasing the creatures of the forest around. Golem reminds her that she's to remain in his sight. She brightly reasons that she was following animals. Stubbornly pushing her father's hands away, she insists that she doesn't have to be seen all the time. Suddenly, they see a large city. Inside, the streets are bustling, filled with kind, non-human creatures. It appears more prosperous than the other cities he's encountered, but such prosperity also brings danger. Ignoring his warnings, she runs to a stray cat, then suddenly says she's hungry. They get something to eat, but the eccentric dish takes her by surprise. Told to finish it all, she takes a bite and unexpectedly exclaims in delight. She tries to feed him a bite, but he declines, saying he only needs oxygen, sunlight, and water to function. Hearing this, the other diners are surprised to see a golem, knowing they never leave their forests. They wonder why he's traveling with a child, and he explains that she's one of the Minotaur race, pointing to the fake horns on her head. Asked about their purpose, Golem shares that they're searching for humans, but all the others talk about is how they used to be good for eating. Recalling what happened, the waitress talks about how they, and humans, lived on distant islands, unaware of each other's existence. One day, a lone man arrived in one of their villages and gradually began to intermingle. However, humans suddenly called them grotesque, questioning why they looked so different. The monsters were confused as to why such weak beings were so quick to anger. Such sentiments spread like fire, which then stoked the flames of war. Weak as they were, humans were quickly defeated and exterminated altogether. Since then, they've reached a peaceful world, without the violent creatures. The others remember the stories of how the survivors were taken as pets or food. Now, they believe that they're extinct, unaware of the human child in their midst. Feeling danger, Golem gets up to leave, sharing how they'll be sleeping in the open. They urge him to go to an inn, and he's convinced, as Sumi requests it as well. While he's very cautious, the child is delightfully exploring the room. Wanting to be safe, he tries to fix her fake horns, but suddenly stops her from being loud, sensing a dangerous presence nearby. They stay still for a while, until the presence passes completely. She teases him for feeling afraid, despite his insistence that golems are emotionless. While the child sleeps later at night, her father checks his injured arm. The next day, Sumi is delighted to see her horn fixed and is told to avoid breaking it again. They head out again, needing to replenish their supplies. On the way, the little girl sees the bright city center, where businesses thrive and children play around. She excitedly looks around, while her father stocks up on their necessities. Moving forward, she sees a bunch of children with their parents and looks at how tightly they're holding each other's hands. It's a different sight from her and Golem, who simply walk side by side. Trading with a merchant, he's dissatisfied with the price being offered, but is told that his items are common there. Unable to come to an agreement, Golem is left with no choice. He takes a gem from the shelf and reveals an eye hidden in his head. Scanning the stone, he concludes that it's fake, along with most of the merchandise in the shop. While he manages to finally get a good deal, he fails to notice that Sumi is no longer by his side. The girl is strolling through the streets, following a cat deep into the city's alleys. Golem takes the high ground, using his magic eye to search for his daughter. Squeezing through tight spaces, she suddenly finds herself in an enclosed space. The cat appears, speaking and obviously not a normal animal. As it expresses how delicious she smells, her father appears, driving the dangerous creature away. In the restaurant from earlier, the cat shares what happened, but is scolded for preying on a child. Meanwhile, the father-daughter duo has already left the city. It would have been dangerous if they realized her identity. Fortunately, he analyzed her habit of straying from him, whenever something caught her attention. As things might not always end so well, he forbids her from leaving his side without permission. She continues to be stubborn, forcing him to extend his hand, to make sure that she follows. For now, she takes his large finger. While it might restrict both their movements, the connection makes her happy. Hand in hand, they continue their journey. While Golem checks his injured arm, Sumi wakes up to see the sunrise. The two work on their chores, gathering food and making a fire for the camp. Meanwhile, a young boy watches from the bushes. While eating, she enjoys the meal so much that she feels sad for her father's lack of sense of taste. A couple of bunnies are drawn by the smell, and the forest guardian invites them to join. Surprisingly, he begins to ask them questions. To fulfill his duty, he was granted the ability to communicate with animals. Despite his warnings, she chases the rabbits around, eventually tripping and falling to the ground. Asked if she was injured, she says she's completely fine, but is surprised to see her knee bleeding. The wound is deeper than expected, and she begins crying from the pain. As if intended, the young boy from earlier appears, carrying medicine. Recognizing the stranger, Golem identifies him as a member of the Oni clan. He's Shizu, the dwarf Oni. Introducing himself as a healer, he applies ointment to Sumi's wound, asking if she's a minotaur, and finding their combination odd. Finishing the first aid, he suggests that they get it properly treated at his home, wanting to look at the golem's body as well. They reach his house in the woods, but they're met with a flying tomato, thrown by Yabus, Shizu's assistant. The boy coyly scolds him, as the fruit hits their customers. After an angry chase, they tend to Sumi's wounds, perfectly treated by the wondrous ointments. As he finds the kid's energy amusing, the girl says he must be a child as well. They explain that dwarf Oni don't grow large, but have a higher intellect than other Oni. Their conversation is cut short, as a delicious smell wafts through the air. As an apology, Yabus has prepared a set of pastries. Amazed by how delectable they are, Sumi calls him a genius, but Golem points out how messy their home is. The blame is placed on Shizu, who then insists that his assistant should take charge. The father then asks that the Oni teach him medicinal arts, acknowledging the invaluable skill. He accepts, but asks for a piece of him in exchange, wanting to use it to learn about his body. While Yabus scolds him, Golem readily breaks a piece of his arm off, saying he can't feel pain anyway. Later on, Sumi helps with chores, excited and finding it enjoyable to help out. While they're busy, the Oni is conducting a medicinal class as promised. Taking hypericum, an extremely common herb, he says it's a very basic component of ointments, and proceeds to give detailed instructions on how to make them. After finishing the lengthy lecture, he then moves on to making cold medicine. As brilliant as he is, the Oni reveals how messy he is, doing away with exact measurements, and reasoning that it isn't an exact science anyway. Outside, Sumi finishes hanging the laundry and eagerly asks for the next task. She insists on learning more and working hard to help her father, who does everything for her. Moved by her sincerity, Yabus gives several other tasks, accompanying the child along the way. On the other hand, Shizu asks why Golem is so intent on making medicine, pointing out how he's got a lot of clothes wrapping him. The Oni guesses that he must be breaking apart, and that he can't afford to lose the piece he offered. Seeing the medic feel bad, the guardian says he resembles his daughter, back when she was hurt. Her expression somehow agitated his chest, and he never wants to see her have such an expression again. As such, a piece of his arm is a small price to pay. Shizu couldn't help but laugh, suggesting that he must have felt heartbreak. The father argues that golems don't feel emotions, but his behavior suggests otherwise. When he tries to refute it more, Sumi arrives, delightfully boasting about how she accomplished several chores. At night, she sleeps soundly, and the father thanks the Oni for the room. While he apologizes for the intrusion, Yabus expresses how satisfying it was to see children act like children. Shizu then asks why a golem would leave the forest to travel with a child. He reveals that they're blindly searching for her parents, regardless of the lack of information. As sharp as ever, the Oni supposes that there's a reason he's rushing. As such, he removes his clothes to reveal his cracked body, barely keeping itself together. He explains that their lives are designed to end after exactly 1,000 years. Now, he only has a little more than a year left before ceasing to function. As such, he must return Sumi to her parents before that time comes. Given the cruel journey, the child is left unaware of his lifespan. The Oni emphasizes feeling how happy she is with her father, and how painful it'd be to say goodbye. On the next day, they give the travelers a few supplies, along with some sweets for the road. Should she run out, Yaba says she can ask Golem to make more, as he also learned how. As they part ways, the little girl proudly exclaims that she can help him much more now. Watching over them, the Oni wish the pair well, with Shizu saying something about a secret the Golem is hiding. He looks at the Golem's broken piece, hoping to meet again someday. In a desert, the Golem pumps water out for his daughter. Although refreshing, it fails to quell her hunger. She takes Yabas's empty bag of sweets, breathing in the sweet scent. Their destination is still far away, but their funds are insufficient to hire a quick ride there. Sumi insists that she enjoys walking with him anyway, and he remembers how little time he has left. Nonetheless, they take each other's hand and tread forward. Traveling far, they reach the entrance of Antol City, which is lively with business. It seems to be a popular marketplace, serving as the final checkpoint before entering the desert. Its name comes from the way the streets are wound, intricate, and complicated enough to make people lost for an entire lifetime. Despite the warning, Sumi runs off while Golem is trading, driven by her curiosity. She attempts to descend deep into the city, but runs back to her father, after getting called out by a frightening wolf-like creature. His bargaining isn't going well, but they need money, so he's told to take odd jobs instead. For now, he has to satisfy the child's hunger. They enter a diner, but find it completely empty. Sumi notices a moving box outside, and lifts it up to reveal a hare-like creature, attempting to sneak away. Just then, the diner owner appears, apologizing as they aren't open yet. Given the situation, they have a meal together. The owner, Koki, introduces his son, Kila, who was trying to ditch his duties. He's supposed to be covering for his injured mother, but children aren't keen on staying put. While he doesn't want to force his son, the owner is having trouble finding workers to help. Hearing this, Golem immediately offered to take on the job. The wife, Gina, appears and expresses their appreciation. As his duties are explained, the two children run off to play, told to remain inside the building. Kila asks Sumi what she usually does for fun, so she shares how enjoyable it is to play with her father. He has the same sentiments, but is surprised to hear about the absurd ways they play. That said, it's been so boring lately, as they haven't played anything new. Proceeding to draw, he sings a song about a strange man visiting a land far away. There, he saw a person with horns and a tail. It's a popular old song, which is quite similar to how they are. The adults notice that the children are getting along quite well. Meanwhile, the diner finally opens, and the customers are surprised by the Golem server, who's carrying multiple plates at once. Revealing his eye, he scans their dishes and breaks down the nutritional values. Finding it intriguing, they ask why he's all the way over there. They're told about the search for humans, and recall a traveler meeting a human at the west end of the desert. Watching the Golem work perfectly, Kila wishes that they stay longer, so he could have someone to play with. Asked about the end of their journey, Sumi's thoughts become unclear. Visiting the market, Golem is shown a set of required items to travel with a child. Lacking funds, he continues to work hard at the diner, making Koki consider doubling his pay. His daughter tries to tell him something, but he sends her away, busy with work. As such, Kila invites her to sneak outside to play. However, Golem blocks their way, reminding his daughter of what isn't allowed. The day goes by, and the last customer finally exits. While the waiter receives his pay, Sumi watches in silence, even at night, while he manages their funds. The next day, while playing, Koki asks the children to pick something up, but Golem doesn't permit his daughter to leave. Kila insists that he'll watch over and protect her. Convinced by the child's sincerity, the father allows it, on the condition that they return before nightfall. Koki asks if he overstepped, by asking Sumi as well. The father-daughter duo has been traveling alone the entire time, so Golem acknowledges how relevant Kila is, as her first friend. Although she was allowed to go out, Sumi suddenly burst into tears. The poor girl then shares how she thinks that her father is trying to end their journey quickly and hasten their parting. However, she wants to stay with him forever. Trying to cheer her up, her friend invites her to look for yozam flowers, which are said to grant wishes. While she delightfully agrees, the wolf from earlier watches them closely. On a mission, they descend a path. The reason adults are needed becomes clear as they come upon a world completely different from the one above. Intrigued by the glowing life forms, They walk even deeper inside. The unfamiliar space seems to house dangerous creatures, but the friends thoroughly enjoy it regardless. Keela then asks about Sumi's odd relationship with Golem, so she explains how he's her father, because he acts like it, caring for her as much as possible. Just then, they follow a swarm of butterflies, believing that they lead to the Yozam flowers. Quickly following, they eventually come upon an entire field of the flowers, glowing in the darkness. She goes to pick up a large one, wishing to stay with her father forever. Just then, a predatory mushroom awakens, ready to strike the girl. Fortunately, it's forced to flee after getting shot by an arrow. The wolf creature appears, saying he's finally found her. Meanwhile, Golem looks outside, his daughter missing despite the sun beginning to set. The restaurant has a busy day, and Golem is observably antsy about the children, who still haven't returned. Sumi is barely saved from the dangerous mushroom, but is now facing the scary wolf monster. Surprisingly, Keela clings to him, calling him Thrika, as if well acquainted. The master scolds the stubborn child, saying he's repeatedly warned him against going there without an adult. He's a member of the Tsuchinoko, an organization that oversees activity in the underground areas. Usually they accompany those who venture down and keep naughty brats from entering. As he scolded Keela, the Yozam flower in Sumi's hands began to wilt. Explaining why, Thrika digs shallowly to show the glowing roots of the Tsuchiami tree that the flowers feed off. The smaller the tree, the less nourishment a flower gets. As such, the child suggests finding a bigger tree, but is prohibited from trying, as the path to the center is dangerous. He leads them to the surface, but Sumi refuses, desperate to get her wish. He says he'll leave her behind, but the child doesn't care. Reiterating how huge and unknown the underground realm is, he confirms her determination. Left with no choice, he leads the way down. On their way, Thrika recalls an escorting job recently, where he and a group of scholars came upon a large Tsuchiami tree. He says that its flowers should be strong enough to survive a trip back to the surface. They pass by dangerous terrain, testing their resolve, but with the guardian making sure they're safe. The group reaches the edge of a cliff, and the tree is supposed to be somewhere below. Dragging Sumi with him, Keela jumps straight down, allowing bouncy mushrooms to break their fall. They raise their heads and are mesmerized by the huge tree in front of them. Moreover, the field of flowers is comparatively more vibrant. While the girl is delightfully digging a flower out, Thrika notices danger, but it's too late. A huge lizard monster gets between them, and the guardian is unsure of how to approach the situation. Keela guards her with his body, remembering his promise to protect her. On the other hand, Sumi sincerely begs the monster that they let them pass, sharing her wish to stay with her father. Smaller lizards appear on its head, and the monster turns away to leave after staring at her for a while. Thankfully, the children are okay, and they commend Keela for being so brave. The Sucha lizards are tasked with guarding the flowers, and the fact that it let her go may mean that her wish will be granted. The adults are in the diner, waiting for the children well past sunset. They finally arrive with Thrika, but Golem immediately questions his daughter, why she'd make an unauthorized detour, even saying that they can't travel together if she continues such behavior. With her effort wasted, she drops the flower and runs to her room in tears. Koki later tries to reason with the father, but he insists that Sumi's fault is undeniable. Thrika calls him obstinate and shares the legend about the flower's wish-granting flowers. While unrealistic, the child believed it wholly, driven by the desire to stay with him forever. He lectures the Golem about how parents shouldn't incite fear in their children. As he's left with the flower, Keela suddenly runs down to alert them that Sumi has collapsed. She's burning with a fever, but they don't have any medicine. To maintain her nutrition, her father forces her to eat, but the ill girl can't stomach the meal. He runs out to buy medicine, thinking about how tiring the journey must have been for her. Regretting that he failed to notice, he asks the store owner for medicine, suitable for all races, not caring how expensive it is. The father buys the medicine and gently feeds it to his daughter. The night spent tending to her illness pays off as Sumi's condition settles. Golem blames himself for her health, saying he was too preoccupied with rushing their journey that he failed to notice what was happening. He apologizes for being an inconvenience to them, but Koki just confirms how caring of a father he is. That said, there's no such thing as a perfect parent, and it's only normal to make mistakes from time to time. However, when he does, he makes sure to take Keela in his arms and apologize. Such is the growing relationship of parent and child. Just then, Sumi wakes up, feeling better than before. Taking her hand, Golem asks that she let him know when things become hard. With the flower still blooming the next day, her fever subsides, and he explains how he's decided to work there for a while longer, as they still have insufficient funds. Realizing that her medicine is the reason, she began to blame herself, but her father assured her that her safety was all that mattered. He can always work more, but she cannot be replaced. Touched, she tears up and hugs her father, apologizing for always making him worry so much. Hugging her back, he also apologizes for making her scared and promises to stay with her forever. As the Yozam flower glows brightly, the child's heart and worries are comforted. Later, Thrika comes up to speak to Golem, sharing how he's met his kind before, brittle and nearing the end of their lifespan, just like he is. He's told not to go back on his promise to Sumi, but he might not have any choice. After saving enough money, the father-daughter duo's time to leave has come. Comforting Kila, Sumi promises to come back one day. Meanwhile, Golem sees Thrika watching and remembers his reminder to keep his promise. The girl extends her hand, and they resume their journey. Due to the sandstorms at night, they must power through the heat during the day, but the father makes sure that his daughter is safe. They soon reach Wine Cup Village, a waypoint built into the caldera of an extinct volcano. With the terrain an ideal shelter from sandstorms, travelers began to gather there and eventually formed a village. While looking through a diner's menu, a drunk resident offers them a shot of alcohol, which is an old custom. It comes from a story, from when the first travelers gathered in the caldera. One of them sold wine and shared his goods with the others. On the days that followed, everyone in attendance managed to safely cross the desert. Since then, it's been a custom to share drinks, to pray for a safe crossing. After all, dangerous sand tornadoes are common in the area. The wine they were given was made from corn, the village's specialty. They also offer corn ice cream for children. Just then, an avian lady, Uzoi, cuts in, ordering the ice cream for herself. Unfortunately, there is only one serving left, so they begin bickering over who gets it. While pinching Sumi's cheeks, the stranger notices something odd, but is unable to say anything, as a man wearing an avian mask, Haito, appears. He apologizes on his companion's behalf, and they share a table, their stories, as well as the ice cream. Staring at the child, Uzoi suddenly offers her share. They're traveling in search of medicine to cure the ill man. Fortunately, she's decided to support him in his time of need. She's from the Harpy clan, while he's a Falcohol, a clan with bird heads. That said, he's somewhat her guardian, just like Golem is. The other odd pair then shares that they're searching for humans, reasoning that he studies them for research. While Uzoi finds the statement odd, Sumi's innocence moves her heart, so she invites them to join their travels across the desert, provided that they help lug items in the wagon. Accepting the offer, they parted ways. Haito knows his companion well enough to guess that she must have a different agenda. To his surprise, she says the girl smells like him. She takes his mask off and reveals his human face, where an illness spreads. Getting an idea, the Harpy proposes drawing them into the desert to do something terrible. He opposes, but is driven to a corner as his condition worsens. While preparing for the next day, Sumi approaches Uzoi, taking an interest in the wheels she was readying. While the two bicker about the desert, Golem finishes preparations and calls his daughter over. After retrieving something from their room, the group proceeds with their journey. For the first time, the little girl is able to travel in the desert without suffering from the heat. Outside, they spot cactus thorns, an edible plant. Pointing again, Sumi sees a few sandstorms, which quickly envelop the area in chaos. The unstable sand makes the wagon back and sway. Uzoi barely saves the child from falling over the edge, saying they need her alive. Just then, an enormous creature moving under the sand approaches fast. It's a sand shark, the savage fish of the desert. Tossed a gun, Haito fires a flashbang, delaying the beast and allowing them to get away. Again bickering over which guardian is cooler, they eventually reach safety. Encountering non-hostile creatures on the way, they get the opportunity to rest and eat before continuing with their journey. The sun begins to set, and the temperature has dropped considerably. Uzoi takes out a crystal finder, which contains a collar stone. A faint sound rings from it, resonating with others of its kind. In other words, the stronger the sound, the closer they are to a cave where the stones are found. Eventually reaching a cave, they prepare to set up camp. It's filled with glowing collar stones. While Sumi finds the sound interesting, a harpy's heightened senses make them bothersome. The two ladies go out to secure light sources, which are torch flies that emit light from their bottoms. Uzoi teaches the little girl how to find them, passing on the knowledge that was given by Haito. They've traveled through several terrains, much like their new companions. She then asks what her relationship with the golem is, certain that they aren't blood-related. Sumi insists that he's her father nonetheless, and asks the Uzoi where her father is. However, she only knew her mother, who died when she was younger. Haito has been caring for her since then, and she loves him very much. Another similarity between them. They resume working, but the harpy is distressed, knowing what she has to do. In the camp, Golem asks about the rumors about humans being seen by the end of the desert. Unable to confirm, Haito instead asks why he's researching humans, wondering if it's related to Sumi. The two ladies return to deliver the torch flies, but quickly leave again to fetch water. While Uzoi gives her partner a look, he coughs uncontrollably. On their way back, the harpy uses a different path and pins the girl down. Meanwhile, Haito confirms that the child is human and reveals that he is too. They're traveling to cure his condition, so he asks the guardian to help stop Uzoi, as she might sacrifice Sumi to save him. The two guardians tread through the cave. Haito explains how they've been traveling far and wide, but have failed to find something to cure his condition. When they were about to lose hope, they chanced upon the hut of a fortune teller. He was told that his blood is corrupted and will never know peace until it's purified. Only new blood can act as a cure, and Uzoi must have remembered those words. They hurry to save the child, who makes the harpy stagger by shouting at her sensitive ears. She desperately runs away, but is unable to escape the winged creature. With her hand gripped tight, Sumi tries to free herself, but suddenly falls into the water below. Seeing her unable to swim, Uzoi fishes the girl out, even using her wing to warm her up while keeping her head down. She apologizes and reveals the truth about Haito. Desperate to cure him, she thought they could have him drink her blood, like the fortune teller said. The two guardians finally find them, and Golem quickly asks if she's been harmed. Just a little wet. She hugs her father and insists that Uzoi saved her. Giving in, he simply tells his daughter to dry her hair. Haito comes up to his companion, who cries in a flurry of emotions. She wanted to do anything to save him, even if it meant harming others, but couldn't do it in the end. Wailing, she hugs him tight. The two girls later share a space in the tent. Uzoi apologizes again, but Sumi has already forgiven her, saying they're friends. As they sleep soundly, Golem assures Haito that he won't reprimand the harpy for her actions, recognizing the nature of someone who wishes to save their family. The man says he has no right to be her family, pointing out the feathers growing out of his skin. Shockingly, he reveals that he got them after eating Uzoi's mother. He was once a normal man, living among a few other humans who were hiding from the monsters. One day, their settlement was attacked, hunted by non-humans. They were caught one after the other, getting dismembered or eaten if they tried to retaliate. Luckily, his family was able to retreat to a cave. They lived on whatever they could find, but slowly lost hope at the thought of another attack. As their resources dwindled, he went out to find food and water, but only found a harpy foraging berries. Desperate to survive, he killed the unsuspecting monster and dragged her body back to feed his family, insisting that they become monsters themselves. Horrified, but unwilling to die, they all took a bite. Suddenly, feathers began sprouting out of their bodies, uncontrollably taking over. It didn't take long for the mother and daughter to die, but he, for some reason, was left alive. One day, Uzoi, still a child, chanced upon his cave while looking for her mother, unaware of what had happened. As he ends the tragic story, Sumi wakes up and finds herself lying down alone. At the entrance, she sees Uzoi, shocked after hearing the story. They resumed their journey the next day, with the harpy sitting quietly in the wagon. With no appetite at all, she asks the human girl if she's ever experienced a heartless lie, one so cruel that it renders every happy memory false. Now she feels as though their relationship has been torn apart. Suddenly, the wagon rocks hard, and they see a huge sand tornado blocking their path. Both girls are thrown off, and Uzoi barely manages to hold on. Looking into Haito's eyes, her pain intensifies, and she allows Sumi and herself to get swept away. Golem calms him down, assessing the situation with his eye, and concluding that they'll be safe. For now, They wait for the wind to settle. The harpy later wakes up and sees the girl dusting herself off. Sumi recalls her words about her family being a lie. However, their love for their guardians is very real. Considering different factors, Golem leads the way to where the girls must have landed. Haito sighs, feeling that Uzoi overheard their conversation. Now they can never return to how they used to be, and the time for his reckoning has come. Regardless of his intentions, he must face the person he wronged, even if it deepens the scars. Sensing something, Golem spots the children, being chased by a canterbird, an aggressive and territorial desert creature. Certain that his body can endure an attack, he volunteers to act as bait to ensure everyone's safety. Finalizing the plan, they set forth, but Haito suddenly takes the creature's attention, stealing the role of the decoy, as he's about to die anyway. While running farther away, he thinks about the day he met Uzoi, and how he's been at war with himself since then. Knowing that he doesn't deserve her love, he decides to atone by risking his life for her. As he's about to be devoured, the harpy appears, cutting the monster's appendages to save him. Golem follows through, shooting and forcing it to fly away. Furious, Uzoi says he has no right to end things without her permission. She asks why he stayed with her, knowing she might kill him if she learned the truth. However, he didn't care. She's the only thing he lives for, and would gladly give his life up, should she ask. Crying, she tells him to live and keep walking, no matter how painful it becomes. The punishment for his sins is to live on with her. Promising to do so, the two hug each other warmly, while Sumi holds her father's hand. Later that night, Golem remembers his promise to Sumi of always being together, knowing full well that it's impossible with the cracks in his body getting larger each day. Haito joins him by the campfire and thanks him for inspiring him to stay with Uzoi to the bitter end, and he envies that Golem can be with Sumi for years to come. The mechanical wonder corrects him, revealing to him that he will cease to function in 301 days, and that it's the reason that he needs to bring the child to humans as soon as possible before it's too late. While Haito doesn't have any information to give about humans, he has heard that there is a village west of the desert that collects all the world's knowledge and advises the robot to head there. Golem goes on to say that despite the hardships of taking care of a child, as long as he knows that Sumi leads a healthy life, he feels like all his efforts are worth it. This makes Haito believe the girl is lucky to have him because it means Sumi can smile every day with peace of mind. The robot puts his hand on his chest, telling the man that he has also found the peace of mind he is talking about. The next day, the group travels again with their carriage. Sumi is sad since it will not take long until they separate, so Uzoi cheers her up, saying that they will meet again once she finds a cure for Haito. While she still has mixed feelings about Haito lying to her for all these years, she feels like she can still continue on with him. The carriage stops as they reach a forest. Haito tells Golem that if they follow the river, it will lead them to the village. Sumi is excited to know that they are going to a place with knowledge about humans. She says goodbye to Uzoi and Haito as they leave holding hands. As the two heroes travel, Sumi gets to enjoy every moment, eating fish by the river, walking through the beautiful grasslands, and so on. They meet a guide who takes them on a boat ride that leads them to the underground village of knowledge. Despite being inside the cave, the village looks beautiful, with illuminating lights everywhere and busy streets. They find the building where all of the world's repositories of knowledge are. They go inside and see that it is a giant library of books. As Hazel, the senior librarian, walks them to the records of human knowledge, she explains that the witches have gathered books in the library from around the world to give thanks to the god who created their land and the life they live. Seeing that the records are missing, she takes them to her bookworm big sister, Praline. Praline is so excited to see a golem for the first time that she ignores her sister and runs to the robot with endless questions. Her office is so full of books that she can't find the Book of Humans in the piles. She tells them that she is searching for the Chronicles of Haraiso. While she is searching, Sumi is at the bookshelves looking for any book she likes and sees one that grabs her attention. The moment she pulls it off the shelf, floating fish skeletons attack her, only for Praline's magic to vanquish them before they could get to her. They explain that they are called book-eating fish, and that old paper soaked with ink is their favorite to eat. Because of how messy the room is, there are so many book-eating fish flying around. Hazel and Praline summon their magic to slay them. The one they miss suddenly appears to be as gigantic as a shark. The witches try to use their magic on it, but it is ineffective. It sets its sights on Sumi because she has the Chronicles of Haraiso in her hands. The child wants to protect the book, so she runs towards the door, only to slip and fall, causing her to drop the book for the fish to eat. Now that it has eaten the book, it charges at Sumi. Golem blocks its path, breaking some of the pieces of his arm. He summons metallic wings on his back, sharp enough to vanquish the fish. Sumi cries, feeling guilty that her father got hurt because of her and that she lost the book. Golem comforts her, telling her that none of it matters as long as he can see that she is safe. The child hugs him, continuing to cry on his chest. The witches realize that they can check the records to see who has already read the book. Hazel looks at the records to see that the last person who requested the book read it 304 years ago. She is shocked to realize that it was someone named Isolde Nebzolf, their library director. Hazel says that the director is still alive despite surpassing a witch's lifespan because of how powerful she is. However, she is sorry to say that she's in poor health. Praline sees how desperate Sumi is to get information about the humans, so she gives the two a map of the library. They follow the map and explore the library's vast secret corridors. They see mysterious flying bugs. They suddenly go loud as they alert the staff members of intruders. Golem grabs Sumi and runs. They reach a dead end as they go in front of a giant pit of water. Seeing as the bugs are getting closer, they have no choice but to dive. They have reached the bottom of the water, where they see a light. Golem swims towards it, leading them to a big room with a giant spider silk-made house at its center that Golem recognizes as their destination. The witches catch up to them and surround them. However, the voice of the director tells the others to let them into her web house. Isolde is so old that he looks like a corpse attached to a life support system. The woman tells them that it was she who wrote the Chronicles of Haraiso. She tells the story of the book, beginning with her ancestor, Fedora Nebzolf, flying on her broom to go home to the witch's village on a stormy night. The wind is so overwhelming that she crashes. She wakes up on a bed with a child looking over her. She gets up to see that there is a group of humans who took care of her while she was passed out, and they inform her that she is in the village of Haraiso. Lord Haraiso, a golem, is there to inform her that she's in good health. The villagers tell Fedora that Lord Haraiso is like a god to them because he gave them a place to live on the island. Fedora asks what the name of their species is. The villagers realize that her comment implies that she's not human, and they change into a hateful mob that surrounds her. However, Lord Haraiso tells them that his sensors detect that she is human, causing the people to revert to their kind personas. Later, when they're alone, Haraiso tells Fedora that the humans harbor fear for the unknown, and that whenever they encounter a creature beyond their understanding, they want to purge it from existence to regain peace of mind. This makes the little girl afraid, but the golem tells her she is safe under his protection. Fedora cries with the floating tears of a witch. Haraiso doesn't mind and touches the tears while in the air. This brings comfort to Fedora, and she introduces herself to the golem. As she stays in the village, she gets to spend time with the village child, Mia, and they become fast friends, along with the entire village. This leads the girl to have mixed feelings about leaving. Mia is sad to hear that she is leaving soon, so Fedora promises that they will be friends forever. The village bell suddenly rings, so Mia knows that a monster has arrived. The two kids run to see that the villagers have already captured and tortured a two-headed beast. The beast pleads for them to stop since it did not attack them. However, the people will not listen, and they continue to beat it up with weapons. Fedora begs for them to stop, but her voice is unheard from the crowd. Even after it's dead, people still keep throwing rocks at it. Fedora is further disturbed to see that even Mia throws rocks at it. Fearing for her safety, the witch runs towards the hill to be alone. She ignores the calls of the villagers as they search for her. It is Mia who finds her. Fedora asks her what she would do if she were a monster. The girl thinks it's a silly question, saying she can't be friends with a monster. This only makes the witch all the more sad. Strong winds suddenly blow Mia off the hill. Fedora's scream of her falling leads the people to their spot. They see that Mia is on vines that will break any minute now. Fedora wants to save her with her broom, but fears being exposed as a witch. The moment the vines break, the girl grabs her broom and catches Mia from falling. Despite what the witch did, the people now hate her for not being human. Fedora flies away with her broom. However, Mia doesn't want her to go. In tears, she tells Fedora that she's her friend. The witch cries as she leaves, thankful for what she said. At present, Isolde tells the two protagonists that Fedora eventually returned to the witch's village, and in time, became the director of the library. Isolde wrote her experience as a story in a book, leading to the human's demise. Sumi now fears that she's a human like those in the story. Isolde tells the girl to come closer. She holds the girl's hand and asks if she is afraid of her. Sumi answers that she's not, and considers everyone her friends. Isolde says this means she doesn't need to feel afraid. She also tells them to travel to the edge of the world, where descendants of humans may remain. She then disappears into countless colorful butterflies that cover the witch's village for everyone to see. Father and daughter are walking through the rain, and they spot a treehouse. They go inside to realize that no one is using it, so they decide to stay the night. Golem explains that the trees in the forest are called candy bombs, that they produce high sugar concentrations, and that crystals of them can be sold to shops as candy. He thinks that the lodge is the property of the tappers who extract the sugar. Sumi is getting hungry just after dinner, so they pull out the storage ingredients and supplies. Golem leaves money in front of the picture frame and tells Sumi that they are paying for the food and lodging. They go on to bake a souffle, and they enjoy every detail of the process together. While they wait for the souffle to heat up in the oven, Sumi reminisces and tells Golem she's glad he is her father. She falls asleep, dreaming of their adventures together. Golem wakes her up since the scuffle is ready. The girl takes a spoonful and tears up at how good it is. She tells her dad how happy she is that she gets to eat the first thing he ever cooked. Golem senses someone at the door, and it turns out to be Yabas and Shizu, finding refuge in the rain. Sumi is glad to see the two again, and she shows them the souffle her dad made for her. The two arrivals want to join in the tasting. However, Sumi suddenly becomes conscious and goes to her room. Inside her room, she touches her loose tooth, not knowing what to do. The next day, Shizu offers her food, but she says she's not hungry, making the Oni confused. The group has reached Bygone City. Walking the streets, they see that it is unruly, a hive of thieves full of poached and smuggled items for black markets. It turns out that Shizu wanted to go to the city because he heard of a great dentist visiting the city, and he wants to learn from him. They inform Sumi that a dentist is someone who specializes in teeth, making her afraid. They head to the dental office to see that the great dentist, Sowak, is a small creature the size of a mouse. He explains his dentist's process and goes into the patient's mouth to check their teeth. Everything he says that sounds painful only makes Sumi more afraid. After the visit, the group heads out to walk the streets again. Golem notices that Sumi has been acting strange all day and asks to check her mouth. Afraid, the child runs away. She bumps into three huge, intimidating men. Golem and the others catch up to Sumi, but the three thugs tell them they have to pay for her bumping into them. Golem and the two easily beat up the bullies. However, through all the chaos, Sumi fell, and her tooth came out. She cries, thinking it will never grow back. Shizu comforts her, saying it's just a baby tooth. They return to Sowak, who assures the little girl that a new tooth will grow eventually. Sowak gives Golem a locket where he can put all of Sumi's baby teeth as a memento. Golem thinks he should keep it, making his daughter happy. Now, Sumi can't wait to fill up the locket. The boss of the three bullies suddenly shows himself to the group, looking intimidating. Subverting expectations, he tells them they did a good job beating up the three. He tells them he can give them lodging, but on the condition that they be his bodyguards for unruly customers in his inn during the snowy whiteout season. They check out the house he gives them, and they think it will be nice. Golem sees that Sumi is already sleeping by the stairs, so he tucks her into the bedroom. In the living room, while they are alone, Shizu suddenly tells Golem he knows Sumi is human, catching the robot off guard. He says he knew the moment they met, since the blood when she was injured smelled like human blood, and he asks the robot why he is playing father to a human girl. Golem tells him that he did not choose the role, but he simply ceased to be just a guardian of the forest when they met each other. At that moment, he felt like a father who wanted to protect his child. Golem tells him about how he and Sumi first met when he was doing his duties as a guardian in the forest. A cat led him into a destroyed carriage full of human corpses. He followed the cat further, leading him to the lost child resting beside a tree, still in dirty rags and cuffs. The child called Golem her father at first sight. Despite how the guardian kept ignoring the child, the girl wouldn't stop following him wherever he went. Even when difficult terrain slowed the kid down, she would eventually spot the robot again with a smile on her face. Golem warned her not to follow her again, but her stomach growled, so he gathered vegetables for her. Golem asked who she was, but the child had no idea. The kid kept following Golem, and despite him trying hard to ignore the child, he kept stopping for rivers for her to drink when she was tired. and feeding her when she was hungry. Eventually, the child was traveling side by side with the robot. They reached a series of waterfalls that the child said were pretty. Being a mechanical creature, the guardian did not relate to her feelings and told her that he only acted through situations. The girl asked if he ever felt lonely, so he answered that, as a creature that lacks emotion, he never gets lonely. Despite this, the child told him that he would never get lonely because she would be with him forever. Golem uses his power to free the child from her chains. Now, the child could happily run around without the weight of her cuffs. Golem went to the water to fish for the child. The little girl saw that pieces of the robot's arm were shattering, so she dove into the water to retrieve the missing pieces. However, she was too small to reach the floor. Before she could drown, Golem reached out and pulled her to the surface. Golem insisted that the pieces of his arm were not important, but the child insisted that she didn't want him to fall apart. That night, the child slept on his lap. Golem contemplated how it would not take long until his body would expire. The next day, he told the child that they would be leaving the forest so he could return her to the humans. The cat that led Golem to the child appeared, and the little girl petted her. Golem tells the child that the cat was called a Komidori Sumi. He decided that he would call the child Sumi from then on. The child loved her new name, and they have been together ever since. Shizu asks the robot to take a look at his body to see how much longer he has until he expires. Golem undresses, showing him how little of his outer shell is left and how cracks are already forming on his inner flesh. He asks Shizu to take care of Sumi once his body breaks down for good. Golem comes to realize that his motivation to travel with Sumi was to simply see her smile. Shizu tells him that if so, he should not give up so easily and spend more time with his daughter. The next day, as Golem and Yabas prepare to go to the inn to do their bodyguard duties, Golem tells Shizu of the efforts he has to make to take care of Sumi while they're out, and he makes the list endless. Yabas needs to stop him from talking mid-sentence, seeing that he is too overprotective. Sumi wakes up, glad to see how it's snowing outside. He goes downstairs and enjoys eating together with Shizu. She gets the idea of making a present for her dad, and she draws a portrait of him. However, she finds that she is a poor artist. Later that night, the Golem and Yabas return to the house. Sumi is so glad to see her father that she hugs him tight. They all enjoy dinner together. The next day, Golem and Yabas leave for bodyguard duty again, while Sumi and Shizu are left to clean up the house. Sumi finds balls of yarn, so Shizu realizes that they can knit something to give to Golem. This makes the little girl determined to learn to knit. A doorbell rings, and it's the innkeeper's lizard wife, Aunt Rosa, glad to welcome them to their guest house. She gives them stacks of food and tells them that it's thanks for being a big help for her husband. She sees the ball of yarn on the table, and she suggests that they make a fita band. She shows them a sample of the good luck charm bracelets, and Sumi likes it. Aunt Rosa teaches them how to make them, and Sumi is quick to get a handle on how. Later on, Aunt Rosa walks to the streets and tells intimidating men with a mischievous grin that she found a child who smells like a human. Golem and Yabas are doing bodyguard duties, apprehending thieves and other unruly folks. Aunt Rosa thanks them for their help and hopes for their well for when they leave tomorrow. She warns them not to take the western road since it's full of robbers and offers to show them another route so they can be safe. Later, when they return to the cabin, Sumi gives her fita band gift to her father. It turns out the robot bought a fita band to give to her on his way home. They are glad they were thinking the same, and they wear the bands as father and daughter. The group then goes outside as Shizu and Sumi play snow fighting. Sumi wants assistance from her father against Shizu, so the robot makes a snowball the size of a boulder, making the Oni run for his life. They spent the night playing in the snow together. Later on, Golem senses something and uses his eye to look in the distance. He sees a group of men riding deers heading towards them. With his enhanced hearing, he overhears them talking about capturing a human. The robot wakes everyone up, telling them that someone is out to get them because they are hiding a human. Yabas is confused since they don't have a human in their midst, so Shizu reveals to him that Sumi is a human. Yabas doesn't know what to think, so he asks Sumi if she was honest when she said she liked his sweets. She answers that she wants to eat them again with them. The Oni is satisfied with her answer, thinking it's enough for him to protect her from anyone. The enemies break down the cabin's door and demand for the human. Yabas tells them they don't have any humans, but they search all over the place anyway. While they are turning the place upside down, Yabas steals one of their deer to escape through the snow. He looks at the distant mine entrance, and he hopes they will be safe in there. The other three are walking in the mine, as Aunt Rosa told them it's a safe route. Shizu comments about how Yaba's only volunteered as a decoy to look cool. However, Sumi thinks he is cool from the start and tells Shizu she thinks he's cool too, warming his heart. He tells Golem that he finally understands why he cares so much for Sumi and wants to protect her smile as well. Golem senses that there are other human hunters that are running through the mine, so they run. They reach a broken bridge, putting them at a dead end. The hunters have caught up to them, so Golem grabs both his companions and jumps to the seemingly bottomless pit. The robot unleashes his mechanical wings, using their sharp edges to hook himself to the walls, slowing them down to a safe landing. Golem thinks he has used up too much power, and he can feel that the creaking of his joints is already constant. Meanwhile, Yabas has already beaten up the human hunters after him. He sees that his right sandal is broken and fears that it's a bad sign. At the mine, they come across Aunt Rosa, and she guides them through the tunnels. She tells them that the exit is up ahead, only for them to find a dead end. A cell gate falls from above, trapping the group. She promises to let the two out later, but she can't do the same for Sumi. The human hunters reveal themselves, showing that Aunt Rosa is actually the leader of their pack. Aunt Rosa tells them that a century or two ago, when she was still a child, their villages lived in harmony. One day, a human child was attacked by wolves. A kind-hearted man from their village saw what was happening and risked his life to save the child. He returned the child to the human village, only to get killed for his efforts. Since then, a similar thing has happened many times over. It was not long until war between them and the humans happened, and they realized that persecuting humanity was the only way to ensure their safety. Hearing her words makes Sumi weak on the knees. Aunt Rosa sings an old children's song about how humans hunted down every innocent creature they found, calling them monsters. She tells them it was her and her kind that gave them that label. As the human hunters bring out their swords, Aunt Rosa tells them it is their turn to hunt them down. They raise the gate to get to Sumi, so Golem makes his arm bigger and sharper for battle. However, his arm only breaks and dislodges from his body, along with the fit band. The robot falls down, vaguely hearing Sumi's pleas to wake up. As he sees his daughter being taken, the robot gets back up with a more monstrous form, and dark energy growing out of the ball of fire on his chest. Golem attacks the hunters with fireballs coming out of his front. He goes so berserk that they run away. However, he goes after them like a beast. One by one, Golem eliminates the hunters until only Rosa is left. She begs for forgiveness and pleads to live. Despite this, the robot still tries to smite her like an insect, and she is only saved by Yabas arriving in time to get her out of the way. Yabas blocks the robot's attacks and tries to talk sense into him, but the Guardian's rage is so strong that he tosses the Oni away, getting him out of the way. Golem has his sights on the scared Rosa again, but this time Sumi shields the lizard from his wrath. She pleads with her father not to hurt anybody. As the robot's hand reaches the little girl, the Sumil has no fear, believing her father will never harm her. As she predicted, his giant hand only pats her head. He returns to his senses and falls unconscious. He wakes up with a body full of bandages under the trees of the forest, with Sumi's head on his stomach. The little girl wakes up, happy to see that his father is all right. The robot doesn't remember anything that happened and hopes he didn't hurt anyone. He apologizes if he has scared Sumi. Sumi reattaches his fita band to his right wrist this time, since he no longer has his left arm. They camp out by the river, where Sumi and Shizu enjoy eating the fish they caught. The little girls start choking from eating too quickly, so Golem reaches for the cup of water, only to topple it. It's Yabas who gives her water instead. Later, as Yabas and Sumi sleep in their tent, Golem is still out at the river in deep thought. Shizu joins him and asks him how he's doing. The robot answers the countless malfunctions in his body and believes that his time is nearing. He sees that his only option is to leave Sumi before he can endanger her. Shizun tells him he will support whatever decision he makes, but hopes that he thinks it over. The next day, they arrive in a town in the middle of a harvest festival. Sumi sees that many people are buying flowers, so the others explain that they are Windrider flowers and that they are used to greet the souls of their ancestors. Old citizens point the little girl to the boy letting his flower fly across the breeze. The old men state that the flowers are said to fly to departed family members and will signal them to pay a visit to the living. Golem comments that it's a pointless ritual, since all creatures return to the earth after their deaths, and that there are no such things as souls or ghosts. One old man tells him that in their town, all of them believe that they live on as souls after death, and that they can someday be reunited again with their families. The group explores the festival, eating festival food and observing all the carnival performances. Yabaz lifts up Somali so he can see the Karnas perform, making Golem feel conscious that he can't do that for her anymore. Sumi looks back and realizes that his father is already gone. Shizu realizes what's happening and tells the two that he doesn't think that Golem is ever coming back. This upsets Sumi, who quickly runs alone to frantically search for her father. She sees the forest and runs through the trees. She is about to cry and give up, only to see her feet a band bracelet, which reminds her to be strong and continue her search. She finds him by a pond. She wants to go near him, but the robot forbids her. He tells her that he can no longer continue to journey with her. Sumi is angry at him, telling him that he promised to be together forever. The robot pushes her away, telling her he doesn't know when he will lose control again and risk endangering her life. The child doesn't care, and she tells him she will be lonely without him. She asks if he will be lonely without her. He answers that golems don't have emotions. Sumi insists that he has emotions since he always gets upset when she goes missing, gets a cold, or gets hurt. She goes to all the situations that tell her he cares for her. As the little girl continues, countless Wind Rider flowers start to drift into the air. Golem admits that he does have emotions. Black fluid falls from his face like tears, and he falls to his knees. He hugs Sumi and tells her that he wishes to remain with her as his father no matter what. He agrees to stay with her forever, and he lets her hold on to his finger like they always did as father and daughter.